My name's Tom Holland, and this is Field Target Tech. This is episode 11. Well, it's not really an episode. This is just going to be a follow-up on what I plan on doing with my Marauder in the upcoming weeks, once I get all my parts acquired that I need, and some other future stuff that's coming. But first of all, what I'm going to be doing, being that it is rather still cold here in the Northeast, I'm going to be tearing apart my Marauder, bolt by bolt, piece by piece, and replacing a whole bunch of stuff on and inside my Marauder, including we're going to put a new barrel on it and some other parts inside. One of the parts I'm going to be replacing is the standard Crossman valve that I have in the gun. This is a standard valve. It's got a very, very, very hard spring pressure that you can't even push this down at all. That's how tough it is. This isn't the valve that was in it. This is actually a damaged valve where the transfer port is stripped out and damaged. So this is just a demonstration piece, and this is the same valve that I'll be removing. I'll be replacing that with an aftermarket valve. Now, as you can see, my very cheap drawing here, I have the hammer spring, I have the hammer, the valve itself, the gauge block, and I don't have it shown here, but the regulator is in back of this. Normally it would be in back of that. I have this gauge block removed, so the regulator is right up against the back of the valve. Now, the aftermarket valve that I will be replacing it with will be this beautiful piece of work right here. This is a Tim Hill valve, and before we go any further, I'd like to apologize to Tim. In a previous video, I mistakenly said that this was from another manufacturer. This is, in fact, a Tim Hill valve. He caught it while watching my videos. At least someone's watching my video, which is good. Sorry about that, Tim, and thank you for picking that up. But this is a Tim Hill valve, and it has a very, very, very light spring pressure on it. As you can see, I can actually move it with my finger, unlike the standard Marauder valve. Now, this is a drop-in replacement of the Marauder valve. Now, one thing to note with Tim's valve, there is no transfer port adjustment. So you get the valve, and that's it. There's no adjustment to meter the amount of air that goes through the transfer tube to the barrel. So if you want that adjustment, you're not going to get it with this valve, because there is no adjustment on this valve. Now, that coupled with another Tim Hill beautiful piece of craftsmanship is the Hill hammer. Now, the standard Marauder hammer that's in the gun, that's adjustable, is probably around the 90 gram mark, if I recall correctly. This hammer is only about 25 grams. So it's a lot lighter, hitting a lot lighter of a spring. It should be very effective for what I need to do with it. Now, again, like the valve, this is not adjustable like the current original Marauder hammers are. This, I don't know if you can see it inside, but it has no Allen key adjustment to adjust the hammer throw like the original. So these two parts, along with a Hill transfer port that goes between the valve and the barrel. Now, as you can see, hopefully the camera will pick this up. I'm using a new camera, by the way. This transfer port is rather on the large side. This promotes a lot of airflow, high or low PSI settings from your regulator or your standard fill without a regulator. This allows a lot of air to go through, along with this high flow valve and the lighter hammer. One thing to note, as I drop it on the floor, one thing to note is neither one of those are adjustable. So now what we're going to have to do in order to adjust my feet per second spread would be change the hammer spring and or the size of the transfer port and or my regulated pressure. Now, with the regulator I have in there right now, it's set at around 1500 psi. It's a lane regulator, and it's set like that from the factory, and I haven't touched it yet. Now, just one thing to note, I did have these parts in my Marauder last year, and with the standard spring, and with Tim's transfer port, and with everything backed all the way out, I couldn't get an 8.44 air arms pellet to fly any slower than almost 1150 1200 feet per second. That's a lot of power for a 177. For my application, it wasn't working out. I didn't have the time to tinker with it, so I removed it and I put all the original Crossman Benjamin parts within it to get up and going, because I had some matches coming up and I didn't want to have a lot of downtime with it. But with Tim's valve, hammer, and transfer port, I was able to get that amount of power out of it. Now, for those of you guys that are into hunting and higher foot-pound energies, you guys like to reach out to, say, 100 yards or even more, you can do it with a 177. Don't be fooled. You guys will be able to sling a 15-grain pellet or heavier. You'd be able to put a Rabbit Magnum through it, or a JSB Monster, or a JSB Heavy, or a pile driver, or something like that. Coupled with the amount of power that I got out of this particular setup, I think that would be pretty much along the lines of a pretty good hunting rig for some of the heavier pellets. So some of you guys, keep that in mind. Check out Tim Hill's site. He has everything that you could possibly need for a Marauder to achieve what you need to get out of your gun power-wise. So what I'm going to end up doing is I am going to change the valve, the hammer, and I'm going to leave the transfer port in it for now, and we're going to see what kind of numbers we get. The only reason why I'm going to change the transfer port is with that transfer port from Tim, like I said, I got really high feet per second, and that might restrict it a little bit. So we'll see how that goes. If I have to, I will put in even a smaller transfer port, which was one of my projects in the last few days. I actually forgot to order transfer ports from Crossman, so what I did was I made my own. As you can see, compared to the Tim Hill, as I drop that on the floor as well, as you compare it to the Tim Hill transfer port, I have a very small hole in it compared to Tim's valve, Tim's transfer port. So we're going to see how that works out, because with Tim's transfer port between the valve and the barrel, I got too much energy. So hopefully this will restrict it a little bit, and we'll be able to get the feet per second down to a manageable level where I can use it for WFTF field target at 12 foot-pounds. If I can't, I'll put a lighter hammer spring in it. If that doesn't work in conjunction with the smaller transfer port, I will take the regulator and lower the regulator pressure, probably to someplace around 1100 psi or even lower than that. If you have a properly balanced system, you really shouldn't need much more than 1000, 1100 psi set for your regulator for WFTF, particularly if I have a high flow valve and a high flow transfer port. But that's going to be my upcoming project. As I said, I'm waiting for some parts from Crossman, a lot of parts. And I don't want to show half of what I need to do to the gun. I want to show everybody everything I want and I need to do with the gun in one fell swoop. I don't want to be taking it apart 3 times to accomplish the same thing. So we're waiting for those parts. In the meantime, I've had some requests on one of the forums about my Corbin swaging dies that I have, and my press and all my equipment. I have coming for my Marauder and my Steyr dedicated dies for each of those barrels coming from Corbin. having 2 or 3 dies made for each gun separately. What I did was I sent Dave Corbin pellets before I shot them for both guns. I recovered pellets that made it up to the choke and pushed them back out, and I sent those to him. And I also sent him pellets that I recovered after shot from both guns. So he has all 3 of those pellets to gauge what size die he's going to give me for my barrel. So I'm having dies made to make pellets for my particular barrels that I have. One of them being a Crossman barrel, one of their newer design barrels, and my original Steyr barrel. I replaced for those of you who know me, I replaced my great rusting barrel that I had on my Steyr with an original Steyr barrel. And it's shooting pretty much lights out compared to the old rusting barrel, which was a Walther barrel that I had on the gun. So I have those dies coming. They're not going to be coming before October. So what I have found so far is I've gotten extremely accurate weights in swaging my 4.53 pellets, even though none of my guns like them. I'm impressed with the repeatability and the quality of those pellets. All my pellets weight, every one of them is 8.66 and 8.68. There's not a pellet that's higher than that, and there's not a pellet that's lower than that. So just right off out of the gate, I'm very impressed with the repeatability and the consistency of the weights of them. How they perform in the future once I get those dies and I pump a few out to test them, that has yet to be seen. But other than that, that's where we're at here. And like I said, in the future, I'm going to be showing a video on actually how to make this transfer port that I showed you before. So we're going to make one of these actually out of aluminum. This one is made out of HDPE, which is basically recycled milk jugs. And I cut them up and melted it down, and I actually machined this out of recycled plastic. So trying to be a little bit green. Actually, HDPE plastic, to buy it, to machine it, is rather on the expensive side, and I have enough of it. I just use it, repurpose it, and we're all good to go. If anyone wants to see anything, if anyone has any questions about something I've done in the past, or has an idea of something to come up in the future, like I said, I won't be able to get to those dies until later on in the season, probably until after the Nationals. Once I get all my parts from Crossman, hopefully will be in the next 1 to 2 weeks, I will be able to put this video out where from start to finish, I'm going to replace all my parts that I want to replace within the gun. So that being said, anyone has any input, any questions, again, go to Mr. Tim Hill's site, check out his stuff, his valves. He's got hammer springs and transfer ports and aftermarket hammers, and he's everything known to man to do with a Marauder. So check his website out. Give him some business. You guys are into self-tuning. You guys will really appreciate some of the quality stuff that he has. And I have to get some stuff from him myself. So every time I go on Tim's website, I see some more toys that I didn't get from last time. So I'll have to go shopping there again. So that's about it for this time. If anyone has any suggestions, questions, inquiries on any of my videos, you can look at all the past videos on my channel. Subscribe down below. And this has been Field Target Tech, and my name is Tom Holland.